way you saw the world, then distorted it. Now you think you wanna rock that twirl, somewhere orbiting. Theories disproportionate, the truth distorted quick. With a forceful grip, they force a misinfo that we absorbing quick. Took the people's signature, that mean extorted it. They forging it, if news ain't good informant to informing them. There's a surplus, but they tell us there are shortages. Credit economy mortgages, dollar that's supported with empty fortresses. But what's important is this, we courting ships, important gifts. Of course it is, what extortion is in accordance with an assortment list of foreign tricks we ignoring, which informing this, informant this. It looked like we were snoring tricked. Pedophilia and the government endorsing it. Yeah, eugenics is exactly what abortion is. You just vilify those insubordinate. Way to matrix engineer, that's unfortunate. Geopolitically we in a field that's for Israel. Wonder is it real? Rappers actors say they high, say they sip with pills. Glorify suicide so they get the deals. Big pharma set it up just to flip the pills. Control the music industry until the scripts get filled. Geopolitically, yeah, we in a field that's for Israel. Wonder is it real?
I'm going to take you on a journey that's going to prove that Joe Biden and his administration are traitors and they have committed treason against America. I only have one question for you, but before I ask that question, I want to take you back in time. We're going to transport everyone back to January 19th, 2021, the day before Joe Biden takes office. And I'm going to stand before you and I'm going to say I came from the future, 4 years from now, and I'm going to tell you what this man's going to do. First day in office, he is going to sign 94 executive orders to eviscerate every immigration policy Donald J. Trump has put into effect. He will take a border that was the most secure border in American history and turn it on its head. Within 4 years, Joe Biden will have arrested over 12 million people. 250,000 of them will be special interest aliens, which in other words, in layman's terms, terrorists. They'll be arrested and released. Since the time he's become president in the 4 years, Joe Biden has created the world's largest child sex trafficking organization in modern history. He will have arrested and released over 500,000 unaccompanied alien children called UACs. Their ages are from infancy to 17 years old. They just released them to a nation that is the #1 consumer of child pornography. Connect the dots. Our government is destroying America from within. I will not stand by and allow it to happen. That's why I'm going to go to across the nation and I'm going to show you the manifestation of this treason. You're going to see crime that you can't even fathom. You're going to see a degradation of the social benefits and welfare for American citizens being ripped from them and given to illegal aliens. You're going to see cities like Chicago, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, and you're going to see them divert tens of millions of dollars. In New York City, they're going to divert almost $12 billion for illegal aliens. The city of Chicago has brought to its knees social welfare, murder, crime, you can imagine, hundreds of millions of dollars for illegal aliens, and I don't care about my residents. They can all pound sand. We are living in a world where our government hates us, and I am going to go on a journey, and I am going to prove it to you. And the question I have after all of this has been done, if everything I tell you is the truth, and it is, do you call Joe Biden a patriot or a traitor?
Oh, in a world. All right. Welcome to the show. I'm excited. Um, so share the stream, and I think we're gonna be YouTube friendly for a bit. We may end over on Rumble, and we'll be on Rockfin, and we'll be on X. So keep that in mind if you'd like to see the full stream. All right. Cool. So I will give you a little bit of backstory as to how this happened. I have seen a bunch of videos popping up on my X recently, and I'm like, this is crazy, bro. Um, we kind of knew it was going on, but to actually see it, to see the receipts is crazy. And so I'm like, oh, this name sounds familiar. And then I remembered who the guy behind the documentary was. And I had to reach out to him. And I'm like, dude, we got to get the word out. So I'm very excited about this. I'm going to let him kind of explain everything that's been going on and introduce himself to you guys. But like I said, share the stream and prepare for maybe the second part or the end of it to not be on YouTube only. But all right, without further ado, let's have my guest on. Ryan, what's going on, brother?
What's up, brother? It's an honor to be here, man. I'm actually I'm more excited to be here, man. I'm probably one of your biggest fans, so thanks for having me. It's an honor to finally be here.
Nice, yeah, of course, man. Yeah, it's funny because I went to DM you and I'm like, oh, he DM'd me in June. If you saw my DMs, bro, you'd understand it's crazy. But yeah, dude, you want to kind of give the people a little bit of just a little bit of an intro to what you've been working on, because I find it very intense, but very exciting in a way that it's going to have bring some light to this.
Yeah, man. So me and my partner JJ Carroll, I've been going down to the border as an independent journalist and a reporter for probably about 2 years now. And after you go down to the border, especially during the heyday when all of the migrants were at the specific ports of entry down in Eagle Pass and Arizona and Jacumba, they didn't have, I would say that the machine was in place, but it wasn't fine tuned. So it was kind of chaotic down there. So you go down there and you can watch as many videos as you want online, but until you see it in person and you see the suffering and you see the carnage at that border, you don't really understand it. You have an idea, you think you know, but it's it's like watching somebody else's pet get hit by a car. It's completely different when you watch your own pet get hit by a car. That's kind of like the same feeling I had when I was down at the border. I was only down there for 5 minutes before I watched what I thought was like a real life version of Saw. I watched this girl come across the border. She had to have been about 25, and she was holding a 6-month-old infant. And she's just made this 1,000-mile journey from Mexico. Now, a lot of people are going to, before I say anything, I want to let people know that before these people are coming and crossing that river, that's their final leg of that journey, they are being invited here by our government. So they are using what's called the CBP One app, and they're registering while they are in Mexico. And then they're getting a text message that's saying, hey, come to America, come to America. So they've made this journey. And the women and children that are making this journey, 80% of them have been S word, R word assaulted on their way over to America. 80% of them. Very few make it to America untouched. So after they make this journey, after they just literally went through living hell for the last 30 to 90 days to get to America, they're sitting in Mexico for a couple of weeks, maybe even a month at a time. And then they get a text message that's saying, come to America. So as they cross that river, they hit where it turns into like a real life version of Saw, 18 rows of concertina wire. So these are giant circles about as big as your arms around. And it's that razor wire that you see all along the border. Well, it's not just one row. They've like stacked it because the migrants will climb over it and they'll crawl through it and it'll get matted down. So it's like literally 18 rows. 18 rows. I mean, it's probably a good 10 yards, maybe a 30-foot distance that they have to crawl through this concertina wire to just get let into America. It's not like that it's there to deter them. It's just there to torture them. So as they hit this content, and it's mainly designed to corral them into one area, right? So they do kind of have like a specific area where everybody meets, and that's the lowest point in the river because they can't cross anywhere else. And during the Trump administration, the river was about 3 feet deeper. So so what Biden has done is actually lowered the water level, so it's a lot easier and safer for people to cross, which has also played a major role into the tens and thousands or hundreds of thousands or tens of millions at this point of people coming over. But I watched this girl crawl through this razor wire with a 6-month-old infant. So she's crawling with this 6-month-old infant. And how do you stop a 6-month-old from reaching out and grabbing that shiny metal razor wire? You can't. So she's like trying to crawl through here, and every foot she goes, she's getting bound up. So then she's having to wrap her arm around the kid and like hold his hands while she like loosens her shirt and then goes another like 6 inches with this kid. And and by the time she got to a point where she could stand up, she's bawling in tears, the kid's crying, and our National Guard is just sitting there watching her. So it was at that point exactly that I realized that no man that claims to love our country or love his state of Texas or love his citizens would ever allow that to happen to anybody. It was the most inhumane, and it was absolutely disgusting, and I was appalled by it. And then after that, I put out that video. And then people started to attack me because they shouldn't be coming here. They shouldn't be crawling through the razor wire, but they don't understand that they were invited here. Half of them were actually paid to come here. Like our government has spent $58 million in the last year paying Venezuelan migrants to leave Venezuela and come to America. So that's kind of how it all started. And then from there, I started to go down and more often, and I started getting a little bit of a name for myself for constantly putting out content. And then just through word of mouth, I started to meet whistleblowers. And then I heard, I was actually producing the podcast for Kyle Seraphin. He's one of the FBI whistleblowers. And we had a special guest that came on his show, and his name was Carlos Arellano. And he is one of the federal whistleblowers who had worked under both administrations, under Trump and Biden, at these child migrant facilities, if we'll call them that. That's me being YouTube friendly in the description there. And these are the detention facilities where an unaccompanied migrant child is actually held at while they are waiting to find a sponsor for the child. So when an unaccompanied migrant child arrives at the border, they could be carried by people. They could, if they're 8, 9, they could walk themselves across the border. Or what most of the time happens is they are brought over by cartel members. So if anybody that's watching this just goes on to YouTube and searches cartel drops child over border wall, they'll find, tons of video. You might have to scroll to page 2 or 3 because they're kind of buried there like the flat earth stuff is, but they'll bring a kid over to do a border wall. And these are 14, 12, 18 foot. I've never seen one get dropped over a 30-foot wall yet, but there are 30-foot walls, and I wouldn't put it past these people. But think about being at like a frat party and you're on like the 2nd or 3rd story balcony and you want to drop a beer down to your buddy, and you like lean over the railing and drop your hands as low as you can. And then once you get it far as you can down, you just airdrop it and just let it fall down to whoever. That's how they are dropping kids over this border wall. So when we talk about human trafficking, there are 2 very dangerous spots for the human trafficker in their journey. The second most dangerous is bringing the merchandise across the border. The most dangerous part for them is actually delivering the merchandise to a buyer in America. So because of this administration and the laws and regulations that they've placed, our government has now taken over the last 2 legs of that journey. And I actually got some exclusive footage or a story I can tell you today. I just got contacted by a mother whose son's trapped in one of these facilities. We can get into that here in a second. But what happens is the cartels will drop them over, and they're dropping them at very specific spots along the border. So these areas are where Trump had put ground sensors. He has motion detectors, he has night vision, and he has infrared cameras all along this specific area of the border. So if a cartel member drops a kid over the border wall, within a matter of minutes, a Border Patrol agent's coming to pick up that child. So then once the child is picked up, he's then taken to Border Patrol check-in, and they just make sure, do you need any medical attention? He's literally just there to feed them, maybe give them some clothes and medical attention. That's it. They then contact a NGO who's then going to pick up the child and deliver it to HHS. So then once he gets to an HHS intake facility, this is where a child can spend 2 to 14 days, depending if the child has been S-word, R-word. And if he has, then he can stay for up to 14 days. If he hasn't, then he's only there for 2 days, and he's processed right out, and he's then sent to an NGO facility. So a majority of these children that are coming across the border unaccompanied are coming with a phone number safety pinned to their t-shirt, or a name tag. Like you go to a press conference and you got your little name bag, like the Flat Earth conferences, so everybody can know your name. So it'll have the kid's name, it'll have the adult name who's supposed to get him, the adult's phone number, and the adult's address. So from there, when HHS gets the child, HHS then does an initial intake screening where they have a bunch of questions. They ask the child, how you been? What's your sexual preference? They do what they call a little bit of a digging deeper questions to see if the kid's being trafficked, if he owes a cartel member any debt. And then after that, the kid is then sent to an NGO, and the NGO is going to provide long-term care for this child, while HHS takes that phone number and that information that was stapled to the kid's shirt, and he tries to coordinate the delivery of this child to an actual buyer, or technically a sponsor in America. And then these kids are left in these facilities. So HHS then calls this number and goes, hey, Witsit, are you expecting a child? And you're like, yeah. And like, oh, is his name Johnny and he's 5? You're like, yeah, it's Johnny and he's 5. That's it. You're like, oh, okay. Is this address accurate? And you're like, no, actually I moved and I'm probably going to be moving again. But for the next couple of weeks, I'll be there like, oh, great. All right. Well, we'll stay by your phone. We're gonna contact you and try to coordinate the delivery when whatever time is best and most convenient for you. And you're like, okay, thanks. And then over, it might be 2 weeks, it might be 4 weeks, it might be 4 months. Eventually that phone's going to call and he's going to call that guy and they're going to coordinate the delivery of that child. Now that you'd think that they're supposed to be vetting them like CPS, like there's home visits, there's background checks, there's DNA testing done. Under Trump, that all was taking place. Under the Biden administration, none of that is taking place. And we can DNA test these kids in 45 minutes. And that was one of Trump's biggest policies was whether you love or hate Trump, the man has done more to stop human and child trafficking, not than just the last few presidents, than every single president combined across American history. The policies that man had put into place today, there are 325,000 children that have came across, just like I described, that our government has taken in custody of, handed them off to a grown man. We are talking about a 13-year-old female being delivered to a 49-year-old man. And the only piece of documentation that man has is a Guatemala birth certificate with no photo on it that expired 2 years ago. And they consider that a valid ID to deliver a Chinese Asian girl to a Hispanic man that's 49 years old and looks absolutely nothing and is not even related. So let's just give your audience a little bit of the tip of this, but I could keep going, man.
Dude, insane, bro. Insane. And like, yeah, to just go ahead and address that, right? Obviously, my audience is very disillusioned with politics and they view it as a uniparty and stuff like that. But it's like, I call what they do oftentimes purity spiraling, where everything has to be exactly as they think or someone's a shill. But dude, what we're talking about is insane. Like it's so the severity of it. I think you touched on a good thing that is edifying for people because, like you said, the instinctual response is to say, well, they shouldn't be crossing here illegally in the first place. Yeah, it's sad that lady's doing that with her daughter, but she shouldn't be doing that. She shouldn't be coming here legally. And then someone in the chat said she could have gone to an entry point, right? But you made the point that they're being incentivized to come here, right? They're actually being told to come here. Venezuela's pushing people out of there. And so this is the part that I find very fascinating is the government's role in the human trafficking. And so you kind of laid it out and hopefully people followed you, but they use these NGOs, so non-governmental organizations, as kind of the organizations that are handed off, like the HHS, so Health and Human Services, hands off these children after they briefly check them in to these NGOs to give them to a sponsor. Is that right? And then they're just given to people that aren't really vetted, and effectively they're human trafficked. So our government's actually aiding the human trafficking.
You nailed it on the head. And I want to throw this at your audience as well. This is a Democrat agenda. And every penny for the last 2 years has been bankrolled by this uniparty sleazebags in our government. So I think they're all rotted to the core. The only one that I have a smidge of hope for is Trump. Literally every single one. You might be able to say a few nice things about Matt Gaetz and maybe a few nice things about a few others. But you can show me, for one, any director of any 3-letter agency in America right now, from FEMA to HHS to CPS to DHS to the CIA to the FBI, they are all rotted to the core. You show me a director of any 3-letter agency and I'll show you a criminal. You give me the full ability to investigate, do background checks, dig through their bank accounts, their records, their text messages, and I will show enough crimes to probably put that person away in prison for the rest of their life. That's how rotted our system is to the core. But as far as the human trafficking aspect goes, that's exactly it. DHS has turned into basically the tyrannical arm of the government. They're almost like our CIA. So Obama gave DHS the same power, if not more power and authority than the CIA has. But the CIA can't legally operate on USA soil. So DHS has literally become the CIA in America with that much power and that much. It's very dangerous, the amount of power that DHS has. Now, HHS has turned into the human trafficking arm of the United States government, and ORR, which is the Office of Refugee Resettlement, has turned into the child trafficking arm of the United States government. And these are not my words. These are words that have been given to us by congressmen and women in congressional testimony. And almost every whistleblower that you hear come forward refers to them as the exact same thing.
Yeah, so this is crazy. So like with Obama, that's very fascinating because obviously Obama rescinded the Smith-Mundt Act. So up to that point, you weren't allowed to propagandize Americans. So the government technically wasn't allowed to. Now we know that they were, but you were only allowed to spit that type of propaganda to foreign countries, and then he removed that, so now it was legal to do it to us, right? Which makes what you're saying very fascinating, because the CIA is not supposed to do operations domestically, which we know that they have, right? Through declassified documents, we know that they're doing it anyway. Like they did Operation or MK Ultra literally on Harvard students and college students that didn't know what they were doing. But whenever they make the new norm that they can legally do it domestically, they don't even have to hide it, meaning they don't even have to classify as much or cover as much up, because it's now like accepted. So it is fascinating to put those two together, that Obama did that. So I guess what's fascinating to me is, as you said, like everyone seemingly is corrupt, but if you're having some people that you're discussing this stuff with in Congress, like that's the part that's perplexing. If the people that are in Congress know about it, why are they not doing anything? Are they trying to do something but they can't do something? Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah, I mean, so we might have to cover that aspect, because we're talking about, we have intel in our documentary from the highest levels of our government and military that members of our own government are traveling overseas to, our word, minor children, right? So this is so when we first started on this journey, to give your audience a little background, me and my partner, JJ Carroll, wanted to go on a mission, and we wanted to travel across America and see if we could prove that what's being done to America is treason. This documentary originally had nothing to do with child trafficking. I had been working on that story for 2 years already, and I felt like I was just over here screaming at Clown World because nobody would listen to me, because it sounds so bizarre. When I say the United States government is the largest trafficking organization in the history of the world, people are like, oh yeah, whatever. Or they think they know a little bit, but like you said, until you watch the documentary and you see all of the pieces put together, you don't really understand how purely evil our government is. So we wanted to ask the question, what is treason? Because we know that the left is so good at redefining words and definitions, like gain of function. I mean, it could probably go on to 100 more that they've basically changed the definition of after they're found guilty of a crime. Like, oh no, we didn't commit that crime. The definition of that crime is this, right? And they change it. And you're like, oh, how did that work? So we wanted to ask the question, what is treason? Could we go across America and show you, America, this is treason, this is treason, this is treason? And that's exactly what we did. But every place we went and every source that we interviewed would tell us something crazy, but it all led back to pedophilia, almost every single interview. And that's why we've provided on our website, we're not just giving you one documentary, we're going to give you two. But like you found the VIP access page. So we're giving you both documentaries, and then we're giving you every interview with every source that we did. I think there's 22 up total. There'll be 35, but obviously it takes our editors, they're working on these documentaries, takes a little bit longer to get them up there right now. So they will all be up there. I got a second team working on them. But that way you can go and verify. You don't have to think that I cookie cut or edited this documentary to make somebody say something that they didn't. You can go right onto our website. You can watch every interview. And we did that as we were going along this journey. So there's a lot of people that have been watching these interviews, each one as we put them up on our website, and following this journey this whole time. So after it was about the fourth or fifth state we went to, one of my good buddies, Carlos, the whistleblower that I was telling you about, JJ really wanted to interview him. But I was like, JJ, it's not even worth it, because we can't even put 5 minutes of it in the documentary, because if I only told you 5 minutes of that story, you would never understand it. It would never make an impact. I would just be wasting 5 minutes out of 90 that I have to tell this documentary. So after we went down to Texas, and Carlos was supposed to meet us, but then he canceled on us last minute. So we were already there. JJ called him and had a conversation. He's like, can you just please get him? And then Carlos called and he's like, oh, hey, you guys are going to New York next week. If I stay an extra day, can I stay at your Airbnb? I can do that interview. I said, all right, cool. So he came and did that interview. And then after he did his interview, JJ, I'm like, well, you can't hear his story and not hear Deb's and Aaron's and Baz's and these other people. So I ended up being able to make a couple of phone calls. And in 2 more trips, we were able to get like 6 whistleblowers to come and meet us in 2 spots. So it was easy for us to kind of knock those interviews out. And then I went home. And like I said, everything started to point back to child trafficking and pedophilia. So I was like, okay, I'm going to start with the 4 interviews that told the most, that were really almost specifically about these child migrant facilities in our government trafficking children. And after I edited, I spent about 3 or 4 days, 20 hours a day, just chopping up those interviews. I started the whole picture started to paint itself. I go, oh my gosh, I can tell the whole. I wanted to show America what a day in the life is like of a trafficked child. And I want to show America the entire journey and all the checkpoints that they go through, because there's 4 checkpoints that I highlight in that journey. And in normal society, those are 4 checkpoints where if a child made it to, he would be saved, right? When that cartel drops him over the border wall and Border Patrol grabs him, at that point, that child should be guaranteed safety. When Border Patrol hands him over to an NGO, should be guaranteed safety. When Border Patrol hands him over to HHS, should be guaranteed safety. And once he makes it to that NGO facility again, he should be guaranteed safety. But unfortunately for these children, they've arrived in, Joe Biden's America and Speaker Mike Johnson, Congress. So when we talk about these, you had asked about the politicians specifically and them not doing anything. I can walk your audience up to, I think there's 600 now, and I might be way over it. It might be like 340, but there's so many of these NGOs because there's so much money involved and there's so many children coming across our border, 180 different nations where children are being trafficked into America right now from 180 different nations. And I think there's 189 total. So just to put it in perspective, it's massive. So we have hundreds of thousands of children every single year, if not multiple hundreds, like 200,000 children a year that are just showing up at our border without parents. Those are just the ones without parents. So if right now Speaker Johnson wanted to shut this down, he could be holding press conferences. Senator Josh Hawley could easily be going to these facilities and demanding that Congress is let in. Congressional members of Congress have shown up at these facilities, specifically in 2019 when it was under Trump's administration, because Trump was putting the children in cages and he was separating the children. Well, the reason that they go in cages is because they are with human traffickers. These are the most evil people in the world. And these children arrive at a soft-sided facility, which means they are a tent, a giant tent, which means that if you separate the boys in this side and you separate the kids in this side, and I can just lift up a tent and crawl under it or reach over and snatch a kid and drag him back to my side of my tent and have his way with them. You need metal cages to separate these people. These are savages. So the kids weren't being separated and put into metal cages. They were being protected while DNA testing was done, because these cartels that come over and actually carry the children over across the border come over with their hands on their neck. And let me remind you, this kid has just been viciously assaulted by a grown man for the last 4 weeks of his life. Like, angrily tortured, and things that you can't even say on this show because it's so horrific. So when that child comes into Border Patrol, even though he thinks he can tell the Border Patrol agent he's safe, he knows if the Border Patrol doesn't protect him that he's in for absolute living hell just forever, right? So the cartels will come over with their arms on the kid's neck, being like, "Yeah, you're my kid, right?" And the Border Patrol office, "Is this your dad?" You're like, "Yes, it's my dad," right? And they don't have a choice. So what Trump was doing was going immediately mandatory. The second an adult and a child, even if it's a mom and a child, anything, we're going to separate them. We have instant DNA tests, which take 45 minutes. We'll separate them for a few hours. Maybe we get backlogged and there's 50 kids that show up. So they're separated for a maximum. Trump's rules were 3 days. 3 days was the max time that they could ever be separated from an adult. We had to get those DNA tests done. They had to be immediate. They were supposed to be quick. And if they were parents and they matched, and they were reunited. But it also gave us a little bit of time, because 40% of the children that are sold into sex trafficking are done so by a parent. So it's not just separating them and doing the DNA test. You also want to have the time to just make sure that the kid's not being abused by his own parents. So Trump had these policies in play, which would have made it absolutely impossible for any of these children to go missing. So our government has delivered 325,000. This was the number as of 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. This is what they've openly admitted to losing. So after they deliver a child to some random stranger, a grown adult, pedophile, you pick your cartel member, they do one follow-up. So I call you and I go, "Hey, Witsit, hey, I dropped, is Johnny there and is he okay?" You're like, "Yeah, Johnny's good and he's great." Like, "All right, thanks, Witsit." Click, that's it. I call and you don't answer. Well, tried, that kid's missing. There's no follow-up, no second investigation, nothing. And if you answer and just tell me he's good, I'm considering that great. So 438,573 children as of, I think it was like June 1st of 2024, have came across that border and been apprehended by our government and went into HHS's custody. And if they lost the first 85,000 and the next 325,000, you could probably assume that there's 438,000 that they cannot find and are missing.
Yeah, that's blatantly criminal. I know we're on YouTube, but I will say some things. Like, I think that capital punishment is aligned for stuff like this. So I guess what is wild is the fact that nothing's being done about it. So I would say my take is that many of these people that are in political power have done something like that themselves, and that's actually why they'll never do anything. Like this Diddy thing going on, for example. It's like, Well, actually, his ex, not to deflect that, but as an example,
Mhm.
did the civil suit, wasn't really supposed to, maybe. And so it threw a wrench in the system. And then the people that were higher up who had been at those parties then told them to raid his house, go get the hard drives and get them covered because they were there. Right. And that's what I think is going on here. These people can't actually track those people down. They are participating in it. And then they have plausible deniability because they have that NGO buffer, right? But they're probably compromised. That would just be my take on the surface because I can't imagine anyone being in a position to do something and not, unless that they are complicit. So I guess
Mhm.
another part of it that's very crazy that you just told me is just blowing my mind. So it's openly admitted that we've basically handed these people over and then lost track of the children. And that's the number that's openly admitted that we've lost track of. Is that correct?
At 100%. I could give you the exact dates, but it was like on March of 2021. So like 3 months into the Biden administration, they had openly admitted to losing their first 20,000. Give me 2 seconds. I'll tell you the exact date and time on it. Yeah, I think it was March. Oh, yeah, March 2nd of 2021. According to news reports, the Biden administration lost track of 20,000 unaccompanied alien children, and President Biden was briefed on the need to expand detention to hold an additional 20,000 children who have illegally crossed the border. That was on March 2nd of 2021. By the beginning of 2022, they had openly admitted to losing 85,000, and that was the number because we had whistleblowers going into testifying in front of Congress in the beginning of 2023. And then after those testimonies and those investigations, our friend Anthony Rubin from Muckrakers actually went and tailed these people. So Carlos is the guy that was delivering these children, right? And because there's so many of these NGOs that are popping up, Carlos is in some like NGO pool where they constantly send him emails, new job openings, because they can't hire enough people to staff these facilities fast enough to continue to open up one after another after another. So even though Carlos is literally the most famous whistleblower in this entire movement, 3 months or 4 months after he had became a whistleblower and went public, he was getting emails from other NGOs that were opening up saying, "Hey, do you want to come and escort children?" So Carlos called me up one day and he's like, "Dude, I think I can get a job back in here and go undercover and move some of these kids and get us some more intel." I'm like, "Yo, you got to do it, dude. Just go in there for like 1 week, deliver a few children, get us an address, and get the intel, get in and get out before you get yourself hurt or get in trouble." So he's like, "All right, I'm doing it." So he applies, goes through the vetting process, they hire him, and he's back in there. Now, in the process, he had also talked to some other whistleblowers who convinced him to go to Congress. And I'm over here going, F Congress. They're shady. I would not trust them, not one of them. Don't do it. Get in there, get the intel to us, and we'll go track down these kids. We'll find these kids, and then we'll blow it up and we'll make it so they can't ignore it. So Carlos didn't listen, talked to some other people, ended up going to Congress. And a member of Congress, I won't say who, actually I will, screw it, it's Chuck Grassley. Chuck Grassley is the man who's supposed to be the face of this. Out of all people in Congress, this man seems to have done more to help people and to expose this and to hold hearings than any of the other ones. But for 30 days, they're telling Carlos, don't take any evidence, don't get any screenshots, don't record anything. Just report to us and just tell us what you're seeing. I've told you what I'm seeing. It's the same exact thing every single day. So finally, I had to come to Jesus with Carlos. I said, "Hey, man, listen, what are you gonna do if one of these children ends up on the side of a road that you delivered, missing a kidney, and he's dead? Are you gonna be able to live with yourself knowing that you didn't do anything, you didn't get us any intel, you didn't get any data, you did nothing to stop that from happening? Because you're right now, you're literally trafficking children for our government, and you know you're doing it, and you're just listening to Congress, which is just the same as the Nazis in Germany that just said, 'I'm just doing my job, I'm just taking orders.'" So 4 days before he ended up getting fired, which we think that Grassley tipped off the NGOs, but he gets a call. And a lot of times he'll wake up at 3 in the morning and they'll say, "Hey, we need you at this address at 7 a.m. Right? It's normally like the day of because they don't want to give you too much lead time to get too much information out there. They're really strict on how they run these operations. Every once in a while, it'll be a bigger operation. They'll be moving multiple kids. Sometimes they're doing private jets. Sometimes they're taking them to, private airstrips. Well, this one time he gets a text message at the address like a day and a half before. So he calls me up. He's like, "Hey, can you make it to this airport?" Because there's so much attention on this, instead of delivering the children directly to the house, what they'll do is they'll deliver them to baggage claim. So Carlos will be with a child and he'll take a child to the baggage claim at whatever airport. And the person's supposed to meet him there at baggage claim. He has the person's number. So he's like, "Hey, I just got off the plane. We'll be at baggage claim number 4. All right, great. We'll meet you there." So Carlos has the child and he has a manila envelope. Now, inside this manila envelope is all the documentation that is needed that Carlos is supposed to verify matches the person's identification that's being given to him. And what I mean by that is if like, let's say Johnny was getting delivered to Witsit and Witsit was sick and he couldn't make it. So his wife decides she's going to go pick up the kid. All his wife has to have is his ID, because his ID, the ID that's being given to Carlos, has to match the ID that's in the manila envelope. It's not Carlos's job to verify that that's your ID, that it looks like you. Again, it could be a guy, could be a girl. Some of them don't even have a photo. Some of them are from Guatemala. This is basically a high school dropout who's never had a real job and has no experience checking IDs or verifying, foreign documents or verifying identities, none of that. And then that's how the kid is handed over. So Carlos gets the address of this airport, tells us what time we're going to be there. And I couldn't make it, but my buddy Anthony Rubin from Muckrakers can, and he could make it 4 different times. So 4 different trips, Anthony Rubin was sitting over in baggage claim and decided to trail these kids because they get into a shuttle van or they get into a car and they take off and they go to wherever the destination is. So Muckrakers tailed them. 3 out of the 4 children were being delivered to a location at that current address where that vehicle pulled into that driveway. There is a man currently living there with aggravated sexual assault charges, or one of them, the man currently had pending aggravated sexual assault charges. So these vetting processes are normally done, within days or weeks before the child's delivered. They're doing the quote unquote vetting process. And yet our government is ordering the delivery of a child to a facility that has a man living at that house that currently has aggravated sexual assault charges on his record. And that's what they are greenlighting the delivery of these children to. The 4th location, he said it was an abandoned house with barbed wire fences and boarded up windows. He goes, if any kids ever went into that facility, he's never walked out. Now, in our documentary, you'll hear Deborah White talk about that she was working at the HHS intake facility. So they're the ones that are supposed to do the background checks and check and coordinate. But she was specifically working at the initial intake. So she was interviewing the kids and she was mainly focusing on the processes and how this can be, what questions we can ask to dig deeper questions, building processes and protocols, because she was working at one of the very first facilities that they stood up. And she had access to all these different databases. And after interviewing people and trying to figure out processes and people asking her questions, she was able to search in these databases. And she started to realize that there's multiple different databases and that different states and different NGOs and different HHS facilities are using different types of databases. So she was only searching one database and going, oh, hey, how many kids have been to this apartment complex? She's like, oh, wow, there's like 20 kids have been delivered to this one apartment complex. That's weird. So she started digging and she started then she searched another database. She's like, hold on. It's like 58 or 75 in this database, but that doesn't make sense. There's 3 databases. She goes, oh my gosh, we've delivered 129 kids to one apartment complex. And then she started to dig in. She started to blow the whistle, and she was doing this investigation, and she was doing it with a couple of coworkers. She's like, don't tell our bosses. Like, I want to make sure I got all the information right. Well, one of the coworkers went to be like, hey, look what we found, and she told them. So immediately all the supervisors brought them in the next morning. We're like, hey, you got to walk, like, great job. How did you figure this out? This is amazing. We can't believe that you were able to figure this out. She's like, oh, I did this. I cross-referenced this database. Da, 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 da. Oh, great. Great job. We, keep up the great work. Come in the next day and our government had stripped all their ability to cross-reference those databases. So they uncovered the largest child trafficking network that our government was running and operating. And they showed the supervisors, Xavier Basara, and the people that are running HHS and ORR, how this was happening and how they found it. And then our government stripped those tools away from them so they couldn't find it.
That is wild.
So it gets worse. So that was 139 or something. She says the numbers in our documentary, or at least in the full interview on our website, 139. So by the time that they had went to fight, then they started blowing the whistle. They started making a fuss about not getting about having those things taken away from her, their ability to search databases. So then they assigned it to a specific person in the department, so that there was only 1 or 2 people there, and there's thousands of kids. 2 people cannot do all of this. So basically they allowed it to stay. They gave it back to them. It was limited. It wasn't the same. And then only a few people had the ability to do it. So it was like, there was never a chance that person that had the ability to do it was actually going to have the time to dig in there. But Deborah had them check again right when she left. And she left, and there was, I want to say it was 330 had been delivered by the time she left to that same apartment complex. And then this is like now maybe a year later, she had reached out to one of her friends that still had access to that information. And this was after our government promised that no more children are going to be delivered there. It was like the 539 or something like that, or 519 children to an apartment complex that only has 200 units tops. And if you've seen footage of this in place, think of like if you went down to like the worst neighborhood in the worst area in a hood somewhere and you see a bowling alley, and the bowling alleys don't have any windows, and it's probably got like some boards on the outside and spray paint and graffiti, and it just looks grimy. And you're like, I wouldn't even. My son's had a friend's birthday party there. Like, I wouldn't let him go by himself. I don't even know if I'd let him go with me. That's how gross this place looks. And that's the facility that's basically connected to where all these apartment complexes are. It's bad.
So that's pretty crazy. I mean, that's like actual, obviously, technically speaking, you should be able to bring that in front of a grand jury. You should be able to actually, that should be incriminating evidence, obviously, for even the superiors involved that did that and have knowledge and didn't stop it, etc. So, but what I find wild thinking about this is when you say the number of say 300,000 or whatever, or
Mhm.
even this number you're talking about here, where they're actually facilitating it through the government, like there's obviously a huge amount that seemingly never get captured. Is that correct? Like, I'm curious about that. So out of the people that are crossing, because I hear all these numbers, I hear 10 million, 15 million, 20 million, you know, I think admittedly 10 million. And then we hear that, you know, people think it's closer to 20 million. A lot of the people crossing aren't captured, right? So these are numbers from those that are intercepted and then still like just caught and released. Is that correct? So like basically the current administration has policies where they're just caught and released to these NGOs and then facilitate them. And it's just human trafficking, obviously, like from what you're stating, it's obviously human trafficking. So then actually it's just a fraction of the numbers, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, so the actual official number, and this was as of let's just say like June or July of 2024, coming directly from Colonel McGregor himself, who's going to be in our second documentary, which is Invaded, which will be releasing on 10/24. He said, coming directly from the highest up levels in DHS, that currently we have 52 million illegal immigrants living in America. That's 52 million. Now, that doesn't mean that they all came across under the Biden administration. This is just total of illegal immigrants that are not foreign-born citizens of America that are currently living in the United States. We think with the numbers that we're getting just since the Biden administration has taken office, that it's over 30 million. And JJ, my partner, is a really, really in-depth. He knows all of the numbers. He was Border Patrol agent for 24 years. That was the gentleman that you watched in the trailer. And he can break it down for you. So I think they've openly admitted to 12 million right now. And 12 million is the amount of illegal immigrants that our Border Patrol had captured. And a lot of these people are turning themselves in. Like if you just drive down the border and you're in a white truck, you'll see migrants running out of the bushes and like trying to jump in front of your truck because they think you're Border Patrol and they want to turn themselves in. These people aren't trying to hide or trying to get away. They know that they're getting the gravy train. They're getting food, they're getting housing, they're getting hotels, they're getting prepaid debit cards. In Chicago right now, if your car has been impounded for more than 21 days, the city's going to take possession of your car and they're going to go give it to an illegal immigrant who doesn't even have a license. I mean, it is so, like, when I say these things, you can't even fathom, you can't wrap your head around it, but it's true. Like it's so true. So our numbers since the Biden administration has taken office is 30 million. That's what I would say. And that's a mix between what they've brought in, what they've allowed, what they've released. And then they call them gotaways. Now, gotaways are the ones that they come over in camo. They don't want to get detected. Maybe they have warrants out for their arrest in America. They're bad dudes. And for whatever reason, they don't want the $9,000 debit card and then thousands of dollars every month and free health insurance and a free cell phone. These people are coming here to commit crimes. They're bad dudes. They don't want to get caught. So we have JJ says every single legal immigrant, you could almost guarantee that there is that exact amount that have got away and we didn't catch. So if they're telling us 12 million, that's at least 24 million. And those are very, very safe numbers. And then you count that there's some that aren't. The only ones that are getting counted in the 12 million number that they openly admit to are the ones that are going through the port of entry or being apprehended at the border. That doesn't count the, like 1.4 million just on one airline that the Biden administration flew directly from other countries. So we have laws in America, right? We have laws that govern our country. Like, for example, we can't provide aid and comfort to these illegal immigrants. So when this all first started, right, day one, Joe Biden signs 94 executive orders and obliterates every immigration policy that Donald Trump had in place. Then our mainstream media goes and parrots it to the entire world and lets everyone around the world know that America's borders are wide open. come here. They're not going to arrest you. They're not going to hold you accountable. They're not going to prosecute you for illegally invading our country. They're just basically going to let you go. And then all of a sudden, within like minutes, right, the cartels were like, this is our jam. This is where we're going to make billions and billions of dollars. All these migrants started showing up. And that was in the very beginning when you'd see on Fox News the drone footage over Eagle Pass and El Paso, like tens of thousands of people sleeping in those like those ravines with their solid cement between the two. It's like a big waterway, and they were just packed in there, tens and tens of thousands, children sleeping on the ground. It's because our government didn't have all the policies in place to move these migrants, because under Trump, in our Constitution states that our government cannot legally provide aid and comfort to an illegal immigrant, even if under Trump, if a Border Patrol agent thought that in the next 5 years that you might need to get $20 in food stamps because you were going to run out of money, or you're going to be a welfare case, just off the initial thought, he could deport you. So our government can't legally provide aid. It's against our Constitution. It's illegal. So what happened was all of a sudden all these migrants started going on and the only two times the border's ever been shut down, and recently, I think it was in 2008 under Obama, and it was in 2020 during COVID under Trump. And then we shut it down because of what the media was seeing happening to children. These were children sleeping on the ground, for days at a time, open cuts, just looking all dirty and mangled. It was the children that people get outraged over because they see their suffering and it's so obvious. So in order to keep this flow going and to move those migrants, the Biden administration goes, how do we do this? And this is where Mayorkas comes into play. People don't realize Mayorkas is the youngest AUSA in all of U.S. history. At like 30, he did it, which means he's like up there with Albert Einstein, Elon Musk. The dude is a prodigal genius. Every single policy, every single immigration plan, all of it, catch and release, alternative to detention, ATD, all of this that allows these migrants to basically invade our country, take over your property, and then not get evicted is all part of Mayorkas' plan. So this guy planned it all. And when they realized that they couldn't provide these things, so Trump had built ICE detention facilities because these cartels were sending over massive caravans. They could just overwhelm Trump's border. He goes, okay, you want to play that game? We'll build massive ICE detention facilities that hold 40,000 people. We can put 40,000 migrants all along this border. He had tons of them stationed all along that border. So if they came in droves, it was sweet. We'll send 20,000 here, 20,000 there, 20,000 there, and then we'll put them on a plane and we'll ship them back to Mexico. Not just right across the border. We're going to take them thousands of miles into Mexico and go drop them off in some desolate area and let them figure it out. And it didn't take long before Trump had the most secure border in American history. I think we had taken like 17,000 or 30,000 or something people that actually stayed in America in 2020. It was something really crazily low. And then this is where the NGOs come in. So our government goes, okay, we legally can't do this, but we can do is we can give money to an NGO that can do this. And then that's where they tagged in the first CIA contractor, which was a military contractor by the name of MVM Inc., Mary Victor Mary Inc. And you can search them up. This NGO was running black op missions for the United States government over in Iraq and Afghanistan during the war. And they were the first NGO that gets awarded these contracts to move children. And they're also the first NGO to get awarded the $600 million contract at the Row Hotel. Now, these contracts that our government awards out by law, our government is supposed to take bids from multiple different companies, determine, investigate what's the best price so that we're getting the best bang for our buck. I think there's some type of waste, fraud, and abuse clause in there that our government legally has to allow multiple companies to place bids unless it's an emergency, which you know all too well how easy it is for them just in a stroke of a pen. Yep, we're an emergency. Oh, there's over 1,000 migrants a day. Yep, we'll consider that emergency. So they get emergency power. So that means they don't have to bid on it, which means the MVM Inc. goes, yeah, we'll do it. $600 million contract. They're like, $600 million contract. Then they come every month or every 3 months, and FEMA meets with DHS, CPS, all these big organizations. And this intel is coming directly from a man who in these agencies, the FBI, the Border Patrol, they have pay scales, GS 10, 11, 12, 13. Well, if you want to go work in Washington because nobody wants to go work in Washington, you can take like a 1-year temporary assignment. You go stay in Washington for a year. You do whatever job they need you to do there. And when you come back, you get to pick whatever station, whatever state. You kind of get topped. You definitely get topped out right to the highest level in the GS pay scale. So you can go from like a day one employee to topped out in pay. I think it's 175 to 185,000 a year, something crazy like that. As an agent, if you just go do 1 year in Washington, and then you get seniority on the shift. So there's tons of perks. Well, this guy did that, and he happened to be the guy that was cutting these checks to these NGOs. He goes, JJ, you're not going to believe this. Jewish Family Services. He goes, man, this is an effing racket. He goes, literally in a room with the FEMA, DHS, HHS, ORR, the director of this, and we're just cutting checks. And JJ's like, well, you doing any research? He's like, no, JJ, I'm telling you. He goes, $600 million. And JJ's like, well, is that like once a year? He's like, no, it was like every like 30 to 90 days, $600 million. And he goes to the next round, they come back and they go, oh, hey, by the way, we basically, he's paraphrasing, but basically we have you bent over a barrel and you're going to give us whatever we want. So we said 600 million, but what 600 million was just for the hotel. That was just to house them. You know what? We're going to need an extra 30 million a month to do same day laundry services. We're going to need an extra $10 million a month to do transportation. We're going to need, and these are just different NGOs. So it's the main NGO, Jewish Family Services. And then they open up an NGO that does same day laundry service. And they open up an NGO that does this. And they open up an NGO that does this. And our government's just sitting here, 30 million to you, 20 million to you, 10 million to you. Just cutting checks, blank checks to these people with no oversight whatsoever. And the kicker to that one is, he goes, and JJ, you're never going to believe this. Guess what we were charging for a COVID test? What do you think they were charging for a COVID test?
Nah, I have no idea, man.
$2,000 per test. And you're thinking, well, yeah, maybe they got to send out to the lab, these hospitals. Nope, these weren't lab tests. These were instant swabs that they were doing themselves in-house and testing these migrants every time they came and left the facility, in which you're free to do. You can free to come and leave 100 times a day if you want. You just got to take a swab every time you come and leave, if they even force you to, but they're still billing it. And then you want to know what happens? We open up one of these facilities on January 1st of 2024. And then on the 5th, our new facilities finished 5 days later. Well, I've already billed you for the X amount of migrants. Let's just say it's 1,000, and I billed you $600 a day per migrant. That's $6 million per day, $36 million a month. Then I just move them to a new facility and I rebill you for the same. And then on top of that, I'm gonna COVID test all 1,000 of those at $2,000 a pop. So we're just gonna tax on an extra $2 million right there. And there's no oversight. This is how your tax dollars are being spent in America.
That's crazy. That's wild. So obviously there's a monetary incentive there as well, which because I mean obviously they're getting a cut of that, right? But
Yes.
I guess what's crazy is, so I mean, like, clearly my position, man, is like I have a pretty, people would call extreme position, I guess. Like, I think all migration needs to be halted right now, and like
Agreed.
all of it. And
All of
I
it.
think everyone illegal needs to get out. And realistically speaking, you aren't going to be able to just mass deport everyone that's illegal. You have to track them down. That's why we can't take anyone in. And like, that's my position right now, is that the border needs to literally be closed, and anyone that's coming in here has to be it should be very rare, if anything. And that's, I think we're in that dire of a situation. And then listening to what you're saying, we absolutely are. So, I mean, would you agree? This is what the perplexing part to me is, because so obviously we have a pretty sophisticated human trafficking network going on here, and then we have players in the government that are complicit. It seems simultaneously that they want to literally destroy America, which ostensibly is where their human trafficking is taking place. So that's the part that's always been so perplexing to me. Like, are they trying to destroy America, or are they trying to utilize it for, their nefarious purposes? I guess I can't wrap my mind around why you would destroy what you're using to pillage the people. But kind of, what's your take on the end game here? Is it just literally to destroy America?
I forget who says it, but it says you just have to listen to what they tell you, right? So let's just use their words, right? Fundamentally transform America. That is their mission. They want to fundamentally transform our country. Doesn't seem like it's for the best. And when you say mass deportation, right? And I could not agree. I think you nailed it on the head. I think all immigration, until we get this sorted out, until every single person is investigated, until every single Border Patrol agent is put on a lie detector test and interrogated for hours, and we can find out exactly which ones are good, which ones we can trust. We need to, this is the most, our country's never been at greater risk to be overthrown, to be taken in, to be just conquered by another nation. So let me throw some numbers at you. Witsit. If you had to guess, how many people do you think were in the peak of the Iraq War? Boots on the ground, men, women. How many soldiers do you think we had at the peak of the Iraq War?
I would have no idea, man. I would think not that crazy many. I would say maybe 50K.
177,000, right? So 177,000, that's a good amount of people, right? Well, let me put this into perspective. At 10,000 per day, which is every day, There's very rarely a day that 10,000 military age males are not marching across our border. So that means every 17 days, any country around the world could literally send our entire standing army behind enemy lines and get them inside of our country. On a bad week, they do it in 7. It's 20,000 a day. Do you understand these numbers? Do you understand the threat that we are in? We're talking about a 9-year-old, or I think if he was 9 or 11 years old, was making like bomb threats or some type of gun threats, talking about shooting up a school. It might even have been older. He might have been a 14 or a 16-year-old on social media and how they figured this out. But if this is in California, they went to raid his house. They found an RPG in like the dad's closet. I mean, we're talking like surface to air missiles, like Call of Duty, like legit RPGs that can take down Trump Force One are being found in like some random kid's dad's closet. So when we talk about the artillery and the weapon, we have videos and photos of migrants walking across our border with a full-on, like a giant long rifle. I'm not talking like an AR-15. I'm talking like you go hunt deer with your dad type of rifle. And they are walking across the border. Obviously, not all of them are, but if one can, and we're capturing this, and they're going just freely into our country, and nobody's stopping this. I want to be clear about this, right? These aren't migrants. Most of them are not migrants, right? They're not illegal immigrants. These are mercenaries. They are being paid to come here. Once they are getting here, they're receiving aid, comfort, food, housing, supplies, medical attention, dental assistance, everything that if you were a mercenary for some foreign country and you were going to invade or going to war or going to take over some territory, there would be no difference in the aid and comfort that you would be provided as a mercenary than we are giving to the illegal immigrants that are invading our nation. How do you call them anything but a mercenary? And I think that's what the message that people really need to start getting into their head, because it is going to take every single one of us. So let's go back to the mass deportation angle here, right? So let's just say it's 30 million, right? And I'll pull out my calculator here so we can get some accurate numbers. So we got 30 million illegal immigrants that are currently in our country. Those are just the military age males. Let's say those are the worst of the worst. Those are the ones we have to get out. No questions asked. We're deporting 30 million. So that gives Trump over the next 4 years, let's just say, so what would that be? Let's just say there's 300, let's go round it so it's simple on the math, 350 days per year. That's 1,400 days, right? And we got a little extra with holidays because government doesn't work on holidays. So let's just say it's 1,400 days. So if I divide 30 million by 1,400, and somebody else can fact check me on this, that is still 21,428 migrants per day. 21,428 migrants per day. Even if I totally blew that off, right? I way overestimated that. Cut that in half and let's just say it's 11,000 migrants. Could you imagine 11,000 people in a day going to the DMV and trying to get their driver's license? And what a crap show that would be. You mean to tell me this government that is completely falling apart is somehow going to manage to deport between 11,000 and 21,000 migrants per day? I don't think so. Now, I do think...
And we're talking about them scattered all over the place.
Dude, there's 5,000 of them in one hotel building in New York City. So when I say that they are like, could you imagine trying to go into a hotel that's taken over by 5,000 Venezuelan gangbangers and trying to clear that hotel when they're armed and they're stockpiled with weapons and ammunition and hostages? Do you understand what this is going to look like?
So this is what's so crazy. So it looks like there's actually not a way that doesn't entail violence, right? So like the National Guard, if you deploy the National Guard, let's say, okay, Trump is actually a good guy.
Yep.
My take is quite nuanced. I think Trump is absolutely going to play the role of a hero and expose a lot of this. And so if we just stop right there, say he gets in. Well, that's a whole argument about if they will let him in or who knows. You deploy National Guard. If you deploy the National Guard, it's still going to be actual like battles in the street. Like now maybe some of these people, I don't know how organized they are or whatever. Some of them wouldn't actually fight in an organized way, but there's no doubt that does exist. Mm-hmm. So I think people really don't like this, right? Because they want to dismiss this conversation as alarmism or whatever because it makes them uncomfortable. And the reality is that America is under attack, and major demographic shift is the quickest way to expedite a collapse of a society. So I guess I guess the part that I'm pretty interested in here is like I've never heard Trump actually specify how he would do that, because I actually don't know how he would do that. And then the second part I'll throw at you is when you talk about how like these are military age men, and I've seen the videos, it's like um seemingly from any country though, right? So it's like any country could be sending sleeper cells, any country could be sending armies and mercenaries. So there could be from China to the Middle East, and every country in between could be coming across our border, right? So kind of what's your take on that? Do you think that like it's predominantly a specific country or enemy, or is it just kind of like it's like we're opened up to everyone come in and set up shop? And also, have you ever heard Trump explain how he would do that, or how do we do that? Like deport them?
That's a great question, and that's the exact question, the exact way my partner phrased it with JJ Carroll. So you guys will hear that in our documentary where Colonel McGregor is going to answer that specific question. But JJ goes to him, he goes, I want to know, Trump, your mass deportation. Oh, how are we going to do this? What men are you going to appoint to run that organization? How is it going to be done? Because when JJ asked Baz how many men he would need to rescue all of the children that are trafficked in America, without hesitation, Baz goes 500,000. And JJ goes, whoa, five. I mean, you didn't even hesitate. He goes, absolutely not. And he goes, well, and then Baz goes, well, if I asked you to deport all of these immigrants in America, how many Border Patrol agents would you need to do so? And JJ didn't even bat an eye. He goes, 1 million. And he goes, well, then I probably need 1 million. And he goes, okay, how would you train them? And he goes, well, we'd have to start deputizing specific people. We would have some type of interrogation process to make sure that you're actually a good guy, whether that's lie detector, background checks, whatever protocols they had to implement to make sure that we are actually getting good men who want to go save these children. And then they would build out what are called academies. So he says, yeah, I think you could take you into like an expert child trafficking person in like a 45 days. I forget the exact, it might be 45, it might be 90 days, but they're going to have to build out specific academies, and they're going to have to start deputizing American citizens. And I think there's going to be a big calling. I think a lot of people like you, myself, will be like, okay, we just need to go for the next year and a half and play Border Patrol agent and go help save our country. The pay is going to be great. It's going to be unlimited overtime. You're going to be able to stack up a bunch of money and really help fight and defend and save our country. That's most likely our best guess of what Trump's been going to put into place. But as we know, as of today, we have not heard any definitive answer on how he plans to do that.
So, and I will say, like I'm the biggest Trump critic ever, right? But I'll very unequivocally say, obviously, like compared to all the others, he's like incredible. And I also will say that he couldn't say that right now anyway. Like, right, if he were to say anything like what you just said right now, he would be giving so much ammunition to like the media and everyone. Like, imagine Trump saying like, yeah, we're going to get a bunch of American citizens to get arms and to enroll 1 million people or more to actually forcibly start a mass deportation program. I mean, people would lose their mind. Yeah, he could never say that. In the scenario, he legitimately wants to save the country and he's going to do something about it. He couldn't actually detail it right now. Because just hearing you start to work out, I'm like, yeah, well, of course he hasn't specified it, because it would be chaos. And even in terms of like civil unrest, because the conversation we're having right now is going to make people uncomfortable. It would make my wife uncomfortable. Like hearing the specifics of it really are for men that need to realize that we actually are going to have to do something. That's how I view it. So I don't know. I guess what's so crazy to me about the whole thing is I know the numbers are low, in my opinion. I think the numbers are low, and the way you know it's really taking hold is because everyone's noticing a demographic shift. And so everywhere, everyone's noticing like their day-to-day lives are different. And so that's when you know it's crazy, because United States is pretty big, right? Like square footage wise, square mileage wise. So when everyone's noticing, but so that's interesting. Yeah, I guess we'll have to see. So I mean, we'll have to see if Trump gets in and then like literally implements like these dire situations. I guess the other thing I want to know is, obviously our government has been trading drugs and trading guns and people for decades. Mm-hmm. This isn't actually anything new, right? Like it's well known. The CIA's been trading more drugs than anyone ever, trading more guns than anyone ever. And seemingly people as well.
And children.
So really the way I see it is Trump would have to get in and just mass fire people. He would have to get in and just like empty out organizations. He would have to just empty out the federal government and replace them through a new vetting process of people. I mean, what's your take on that? Because I think we're in that scenario, right, where it's like literally has to be gutted.
If I was Trump, the first thing I would do on day one is sign an executive order and defund every NGO. Good, bad, great, the other, they would all be getting defunded. Then I would immediately, the second I've signed that executive order, the next one would be a declassification release. I would declassify everything. I would implement and put in a government agency that specifically has no only purpose is just to declassify records. And I would declassify everything. That way, at the very least, if they come after you, Trump, and they come after to attack you, we have all the evidence that we need to put these people in prison for life. So those, I think, are two of the very most important things, is defunding these NGOs and then declassifying everything. And then maybe rescinding Obama's policy about propaganda and stripping away everything. So we have people like the Heritage Foundation and Project 2025, right? Where if you actually listen and read that, it has nothing to do, all it has everything to do with is gutting bureaucracy. It literally is a step-by-step play for Trump to do exactly what you are talking about, gutting this entire administration. And they've went so far and went deep and dug deep into every single position of authority, what people might take that role. They've already gone and spent probably millions of dollars running background checks, vetting these people, taking a look at their record. So they've actually suggested key people that would be great if Trump does say keep the FBI, who should be the director of the FBI. Why? There's these full reports that are wrote up, and it's all about just gutting the bureaucracy. So I've been, since day one, a massive fan. I think Trump even coming out and saying, I have nothing to do with Project 2025 was retarded, because then they started to go after him even more about Project 2025, and then he attached himself to it. Versus he has Agenda 47, which I think is great. And so people don't think I'm this ultra MAGA dude, right? 3 years ago, I was at crypto, bro. I was over here stacking Bitcoin, live streaming, trading. If you came into my live stream and talked about Trump, and you can ask anyone, I have 100-something thousand subscribers on YouTube, I would kick you out of my live stream, or I would shut the live stream down. I didn't want to talk about politics. I didn't want to hear about Trump. I didn't care. And today, I would take a bullet for Trump. But do I trust him? Absolutely not. Do I think that he's going to drain the swamp? I'm not holding my breath, man. The biggest problem with Trump is his ego and the people that he surrounds himself with. And I think that because at the end of the day, he has a really good heart. Like, you see some of the stuff that this man has done for families that we've never heard of. Like, you have to actually dig, because the news will never talk about it. Paying for cancer treatments, the stories about buying people houses because somebody fixed his tire. Like, these are all true stories. And just, the guy is really, honestly, just a good person. Right. And considering you're a billionaire and you could have anything you want whenever you want it, and you basically grew up super rich, like, he could be a horrible person. Right. Could you imagine if Trump was actually a bad guy and played their game? He would be their perfect candidate. Well-spoken. He would be, if he was a Democratic president and was carrying out this agenda, we would be in serious trouble, folks. But he wasn't. And we wouldn't know any of this if it wasn't for him. I remember people talking about fake news and hearing Trump, why is he talking about the fake news? And I was like, dude, what is this guy talking about, bro? Fake news, get over yourself, man. And now I'm over here thank gosh he did that, because we wouldn't have known. And could you imagine if it wasn't for Laura Loomer, Hillary Clinton would have been president in 2016. And you can tell, but this whole agenda was in play. Trump was a fluke, and none of this was supposed to happen. This was all supposed to roll. COVID was going to come out in 2017. You guys remember when Alex Jones went on Conspiracy Theory in 2012 with Bessie Ventura, and they had the exact date, the exact location, how it was going to be distributed. In my personal opinion, out of all Alex Jones's crazy stuff, that was his best. And he'll even tell you that was his best exposed and prediction ever. Predicted COVID 5 or 6 years before, down to the T, everything. And then throw 9/11 on top there. He predicted that too. So, the guy's been in front of all these, and we would be New Zealand. We would be, we would be gone. We wouldn't even have a nation. They just passed or they're working on passing, which is why a lot of people are saying the Diddy stuff's leaking right now, right? Our government, the Democrats, are actively signing over our rights to the UN. And then today, just a few minutes ago, I got a text message from another buddy of mine, and this is so this is Congress, right? And you have to ask yourself, anytime you see anything bipartisan, you should instantly think red flags. Anytime our government has ever came together to pass anything, think Patriot Act, think the last continuing resolution, right? So this died suddenly. They said, breaking, Congress just ran a drill to test run replacing lawmakers after a mass casualty assassination event. A constitutional amendment is being proposed by these 4 congressmen to make all elected officials choose 5 people who can be picked by their state governor if they are killed without any vote from constituents. Rep. Derek Kelmer, Brad Wenstrap, William Timison, and M. Emanuel Cleaver said the community amendment allows Congress to be replaced overnight. This week, the United Nations held a summit of the future where they laid out a plan for the UN's martial law takeover in the event of mass casualties Black Swan event, which can also be a new pandemic. The UN called for an emergency platform that would allow a shadow government overseen by unelected elite and activated if chaos has erupted in America. The protocol would bring together all relevant actors that can contribute to the response, including but not limited to the networks of willing member states, the United Nations system, international finance institutes, religious bodies, and relevant private sector, civil society, academic, and non-governmental actors. So these same NGOs that are destroying our life and invading our country, yeah, they can be the ones that are actually in charge of you to run day-to-day operations. Now, among the elite attendants was Bill Gates. Also disclosed at the event was the takeover of 30% of the world's land and ocean. The rise of global governance is here. This is why Diddy scandal is breaking now. And I got one more that they just posted as well. And this was over in the Washington Post, which is behind a paywall, and I can't get into it, but it says, scared by violence, lawmakers plan for possible mass casualty event. So they're pushing this out on the news, which they always do with their predictive programming. What are they trying to warn you about, America? And I'll end it on this. So we were going down to Texas, and we were supposed to be meeting up with Doc Pete Chambers. He's the DOD whistleblower that have came out. You guys probably know, if anybody follows the movement, you probably understand and know who Doc Chambers is. He's a neurosurgeon in the military, and he launched Operation Lone Star for Governor Greg Abbott as when he retired from the military, went to the National Guard, and then became the #1 lieutenant down there running Operation Lone Star, answering directly to Greg Abbott. So this guy's high up. Now, I think he spent 33 years in the military. He's obviously made some very, very powerful friends and very elite people in the military. And we were flying down to Texas to do an interview with him. We flew all the way down there just specifically to interview him and my buddy Hernando Arce. And we were about an hour away. We'd already got our rental car. We got off the plane. It was like a 3-hour drive. And we were about an hour away, and we get a text message from Doc saying, hey, family emergency. One of my nephews just got in a car accident. It's really bad. I got to run to Colorado. I'm so sorry. I'm going to make it up to you. I'm going to introduce you to my guys that are down here. They'll talk to you. They'll give you all the information that you need, any questions they can answer for you. And then I'll end up meeting up with you guys when you guys go to Colorado in like 2 or 3 weeks. So like, all right, cool. So we go down to talk to these guys. And we go into this facility, which is actually a front. So it's a bar in a place in Texas. And they're running like basically like a Black Ops military group. It's like for these elite people that used to be big players in the military, special forces, Black Ops guys. And they kind of do recon. So they'll go to like local ranches, and they'll sit out on the ranches when the cartels are coming over. And they're all nonprofit. They just do to help secure Texas and help fortify local government, because that's what's really going to protect you is your local government. So these 2 gentlemen start telling us these stories. And within 5 minutes, I'm like, man, can I record this? And they're like, nah, man, we for whatever reason, like we don't want to be on camera. 5 minutes later, I'm like, hey, man, would you guys mind if I just record the audio just so for myself so I can understand and take notes later? And they're like, listen, we can't for legal reasons and for certain like they're undercover and they don't want their names out there. And they're doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes. So it's really important that their identities remain hidden. He goes, but the real reason is because if I were you, I would stop filming this documentary and I would go home right now and get my family ready for what's coming. He goes, I want to be very clear on this. And I want you to remember the rule of 3s. He goes, you can go 3 minutes without oxygen to your brain and you're dead. You can go 3 days without water, you're dead. You can go 30 days without food and you're dead. You can go 3 hours outside without shelter in bad weather and you're dead. He goes, if you live within 5 miles of any major interstate, he says, if you live within 15 miles of any major city, or you live within 5 minutes of any major interstate, when one of these 4 scenarios play out, if you don't get out immediately, and I mean within hours, and get way out of that area, he goes, you're going to be within the 33% of the population that's dead within the first 30 days when any one of these scenarios plays out. He goes, let me just throw a couple at you. Number one would be a cyber attack in banks. So imagine cyber attack happens and which we already seen them try to kind of run that one through, and all the airlines shut down, and everything was backed up on this one cloud service or whatever the security infrastructure was that crashed. That failed, right? Because certain airlines like Southwest had been using Windows 3 and like they didn't crash because they didn't update the Bill Gates security software. That one failed, but let's just say it would have worked, right? And then when did that happen? Oh, that happened like, what was that? The day before or the day after they tried to assassinate Trump. So there was going to be an assassination of our president, and they were going to trigger this. A day after, and they were going to trigger this collapse, right? And you're going to be locked out of your banks. So being locked out of your banks after they just assassinated Trump, how long do you think it would have been before complete chaos set in? Probably 2 days, 24 hours at best. So it would have been pretty serious. Now let's talk about the next one they told me, which was the grid down outage. So he goes, right now there's 16 major power grids all across America, and these are very key power grids that basically connect everything else together. Those power grids have transformers that are the size of your house. And the sad part about these transformers is we don't produce them in America. Some are produced in Germany, some are produced in China. These aren't things that you just keep a backup on because they almost never go bad, and they give ample notice when they are going bad. So you have years to basically replace them and have your backup ready on standby. And a lot of times he said they'll just build like another facility, another grid, like right next to that one, and leave that one running, and they'll just swap over power, and then they'll dismantle the old one. That's how much work goes into these. He goes, but those transformers, right? These 16 transformers, a migrant with a long rifle, a 22 long rifle, into one of these transformers can completely blow it out. He goes, so you get 16 snipers in these key areas all across the country, and you'd simultaneously hit these power grids, which they can do. He goes, you would take out the entire grid across America. And anybody that's been in any major city, I mean, I was in Chicago and I made a wrong turn and went under this like tunnel bridge under the city. And it took me like 2 hours to go a mile. I was leaving New York. It took me 4 hours to go like 2 miles. So when I say like any one of these scenarios plays out, he goes, no matter what I gave you, I could literally give you video evidence of Joe Biden assassinating a child and then have him going and like writing his name in blood on the child's head and like posing for a photo and grabbing today's newspaper. And you could run it through whatever software and verify that it wasn't AI or a deep fake. He goes, no matter what I give you, it is not going to be enough to make any impactful change or stop what is coming. So my best advice to you is to go home and get your family ready for what's coming, because it can't be stopped. And I go, that was dark. It was dark. And I immediately came home and I got, and I just went to work, right? Like you have to have dry food. You have to have some type of food at the very least for the first 7 days. You don't want to be going out into this world. Like if you're not healthy, if you're not in shape, if you're overweight, if you can't run a mile, they're going to mow you down. These are high T military age men that are coming from the most war-torn, dangerous areas of the entire world. 180 different continents are sending their most violent and vicious thugs and mercenaries over here, right? Pay attention, because these people they're not coming over. And how right? So anybody that's in a border town, you might think I'm full of it, right? Go and take a look at the teeth. When you're watching all these videos of the migrants and they're sitting there smiling, pay attention to their teeth. Because the number one, they did this research, and this came from George Hill. He's an FBI, NSA whistleblower. So they did this study, like what is the easiest way to take a man off the battlefield? What is the most dangerous scenario for somebody to have when they're out on an open battlefield? And they realized the number one thing that'll take a man off a battlefield is a toothache. Like it's almost suicide sending a man into war zones when he's got a toothache, because you can't fix it. You can't change it. You can't do anything to take that pain away. And then if the infection gets bad, it'll get up into your brain. It'll kill you. So you have to, you get a bad tooth infection. So if you look at the men, and they're coming from these areas where like they don't even have running water, let alone toothbrushes or any like type of dental or anything, and they have crispy, clean, straight white teeth, those are mercenaries. That is military. Right. And when you see them in groups of 20 of them all together and they're all smiling, they all have the same exact teeth. And a lot of them, why are they all wearing masks? Right. Why do some of these migrants coming over with masks? Is it the dust? And maybe they're just trying to hide the obvious. So pay attention to that. It's one thing I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty good takeaway, something to learn there. So.
Wow. Yeah, that's intense, man. I mean, Obviously, I always try to say, like, I'm not a defeatist or whatever, but I will say it is certainly a pretty crazy time. And it almost does seem like it'd be weird if they let it get through to the election without anything happening. Like I said, a lot of my audience thinks it's all a plan, including Trump, right?
I thought that
And
too.
and I get it because his entire administration is Israel, and like you said, if one side agrees with the other side, well, they all agree on that. They all agree on Israel, and they run everything. And then there's the take that Trump has to play along to get in the second time, and etc. And I could probably like sell that better than almost anyone you know. But all that aside, it doesn't seem like we have a few options. Like a major event happens, and I kind of think that they maybe don't want to do that. I think that they like to use the U.S. as a slave state. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they actually want to completely cause havoc and collapse the whole thing. I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe they want to weaken and cause enough chaos to bring in order, right? Order through chaos. That's an option. I also can see like major civil unrest from the election being stolen again. For people to feel the election stolen again, what do you think people are gonna do, bro? Like, I think that they're gonna get really, really, really angry. I don't know. And then obviously Trump getting assassinated is another major. And some say that they think the assassination attempts weren't real. Some say they think they are, whatever. But we're clearly we're being reminded, like it's definitely like in the conscious of everyone's mind, like Trump getting assassinated, someone's trying to kill Trump again. Oh, there's a bounty on Trump's head. Trump, where everyone's paying attention. People that don't pay attention to the politics at all, don't watch the news at all, they're all in all of their minds is like Trump could be getting assassinated. That's obviously chaos as well. So I have to agree overall that it does seem like all things are kind of pointing towards a major event. And then the last thing I'll say is it also looks like they just pull an event, blame it on a certain country. That a country would be Iran, and then they get us to try to go to war for Iran, which the writing's on the wall for that as well. Even with them saying that they're the ones trying to kill Trump. So I'm all over the place, right? I think they're good at their job because I can't figure out exactly what is going on. But
Let me throw one at you there. You had dug in, I'm sure. Have you ever looked into Project Looking Glass? That kind of goes along the flat Earth, right?
mm-hmm.
So those who have understood what Project Looking Glass is basically our government has figured out a way, whether it's through a portal or whether it's through, I forget what the particle accelerators, that they basically have the ability to kind of peer into the future, right? And they discovered this a very long time ago. And supposedly there's some event that is is now probably in the near future, but it was in the much more distant future back then, that they didn't like the outcome of. So ever since then, a lot of people say that some of these wars have been started. Like they're trying to basically make a global world altering event. And then through that event, hopefully that it changes the future. And they kept peering back in this thing. And no matter what they do, they haven't been able to change it. So I'm just curious on, what are your thoughts on Project Looking Glass? Have you ever looked into that?
I don't know, man. Yeah, I don't know. Like, as far as I would go, is I would think that there's an etheric realm and that there may, I don't know. I think time is conceptual. I don't think you can traverse it. So, could there be something to it? I like something to, like an etheric component of it. Sure, maybe, yeah, but
Why
I
would they
don't
try to
know.
kill Trump if they were going to rig and do it that way anyways? That's the part that I can't really wrap my head around.
Is them what I say again?
Like if you were confident that you could rig this election, right? And you were so confident that, after you rigged it, you didn't have anything to worry about. Why take him out? Is that just because it'd be easier to convince people that she won? Or if you thought you had this thing in the bag, would they be really trying to take him out and risking, exposing themselves? Because I think we're all on the same page that this wasn't some random lone shooter on a roof by himself that just got within 120 yards of Trump because a few people at the Secret Service made a few mistakes and they didn't, follow proper protocol. I mean, this guy was obviously connected to some very powerful people, and directly connected to BlackRock, and he was training at the facilities where DHS trains and Secret Service trains, and then so was the other guy, and then they were sending money. They were sending money back and forth together. It's just like, so I can't tell if they're getting so sloppy and they're so in panic mode that everything that fails is just a giant mistake, or if you said if this is all part of the plan. I can't tell, man. Like,
yeah, I definitely leave the second one open. Like, I definitely like it, because for me, dude, dude, the CIA is gonna send someone to kill Trump. They're not gonna miss a shot, bro. Like, in my opinion, they're gonna have multiple shooters. They're not gonna miss it, right? And they're not gonna have a guy. I don't know. Like, that's just what I think. I just think it would be insane that they would have got that close to Trump and not killed him if it was like an actual intel. And obviously, the official story is complete nonsense. No one believes the official story. It's so much nonsense, right? And the Secret Service hasn't even come out and like given official answers for anything. They're obviously complicit, as far as we can tell. And that's exactly how an intel operation would work. You know, they'd know, everyone would be hush hush. Need to know. No one's allowed to say anything. Everything would be classified. So I don't know. Like, that's why I'm saying, like, I have to tip my hat to whatever's going on. They've made it so convoluted that it's hard to tell. And with so like you're saying, if they think they can steal it, well, there's obviously the take that it's always stolen, right? And the votes are on a computer software that's used in Venezuela. It's the same program they used to count votes in Venezuela, literally the same. And then they say, oh, but these weren't run through the program, and then turns out they were all online on the computer program after they claimed that they weren't in some of these states, and then they recounted them. Like, they just hand voted the supposed votes, right? So like they didn't check anything. They counted what was illegally given as a vote. So I think it's kind of been like that even with the George Bush situation. People talked about, did George Bush really win? It seems to be stolen. So obviously a lot of people in my eyes, for example, would be like, oh, it's all fake. The president's selected, not elected. Who knows? Maybe there's some middle ground there where if there's such an overwhelming amount of people that come out and vote, like there's only so much they can cook the books. And I would say that would be my answer to you if in that scenario. Like, they're not 100% positive because people are actually on the lookout for that right now, way more than ever. And so in that scenario, they may not get away with actually stealing it. I don't know. We still use the same computer program that can easily lie about votes. Like, as far as I understand, no one's made major changes away from that. So we all know that there's just like, it still could just be fake, right? Because like everyone knows it. So it's kind of a weird situation. So I guess that's kind of my take on that is that I've never thought that who knows? Like, if it's real, I mean, that would be cool. I would certainly I like the sound of that, right? That our votes are legitimate and who knows? So you have many options to go there. Either like they're not positive that they can rig it, and so they want to take him out just in case. They have the real, say in the scenario the votes are real, like they're really keeping up with it, and it looks like obviously a lot of people are going to support Trump, and they don't think they can win, so they got to take him out. And they got to try to make it where they're not connected to it. And then they threw out the 150K all over the news, so anyone will go try, right? That's obviously the one take. And then the other take is that he's either selected to be in there or not selected to be in there. And say they want him to be in there, then the assassination attempts are to kind of build rapport. And that's a very crazy take because and I'll stop ranting, but that's the take that he does come in and he does start to save the day. He does start to expose the pedophilia, expose the human trafficking, and then he double crosses all of us. He sets up the whole new system because everyone lets their guard down, and he's like digitalizes everything, and then he could really be our major threat. But I would still take that. I would take that over the alternative. Like, if someone's going to come in and expose all the pedophilia in the government and expose the human trafficking and deportation, like just for that moment that we have breathing room and darkness is shown to the light, it's like I'm way better with that take. So that's why I'm like, in the grand scheme, I do support Trump in that way, right? Like, no matter what the scenario is, it's better than just like overt evil and tyranny. So that's kind of my long take. Yeah.
No, I think you're right. And it's like once you start going down the flat earth rabbit hole, right? And you really understand the psyop that is, that we're all been living in for the last 70 years, and how that story has never came out or the truth has been covered up. I mean, you guys have done a phenomenal job at waking up, hundreds of thousands of people, if not probably millions by now. But think about that. if that, I mean, every move landing, every movie, all the press conferences, the NASA, the this, it's all been a lie. And it's all scripted. And every president from the beginning of history, whether knowingly or not knowingly, bought into the psyop and went right along with it. It's like every president since Kennedy has basically told us we're going to go to Mars. And then you hear Trump over here, which you have to know, right? With what he did with Space Force, right? And then we have speeches of the Space Force, like highest colonel in the Space Force at some university, talking about free energy. And then also talking about us right now, today, we have the technology to transport any man from anywhere in the world to any other point in the world in under an hour. And we also have the ability to give free energy to the world from space. This is space technology. They call it space, right? But we know it's just the ether up there is an abundance of unlimited energy. So we don't, like, we have this technology already. And then you look at Elon and you look at SpaceX and you look at these rocket videos that are so bizarro world to me, and the fake CGI. And then you see Elon talking about we're going to Mars, we're going to travel the universe, and we're having this intergalactic, consciousness and all this stuff. And it's like I start leaning more towards your guys' side of being like, this is all just, I mean, it seems like this is all such a circus. And it's like every time we think they got Trump, it's like last minute, by the grace of God, he magically wiggles out. Like, we thought he was going to be in jail. Like, every single person was like, oh, they're going to put him in jail. He's going to Rikers. They're ordering the National Guard. They're reorganizing Rikers to hold Trump. And then the day before he's supposed to get sentenced, magically, it's all waived. It was on the 19th of September or 18th. He was supposed to be going to prison, right? Until he was going to win the election from jail, and they weren't going to kill him because he was going to be in a jail cell. And so I go, why would they not? Why would they cancel that? And then what is it, like a week later, he gets the second assassination attempt. So maybe they had the judge purposely put off that sentencing so they could try to take him out again, because they knew that once he got into prison, that he would be in a very small area. He'd be surrounded by National Guard or Secret Service, and those were his people that he was going to pick, that there was just going to be no way that there was ever going to be somebody alone or anybody could actually get to Trump inside that facility. So maybe they had to change that court date. Or maybe, like you said, this is all just planned and we're all getting played, because it seems like at the exact right time, at the perfect moment, that this happens and it changes direction and it gives us a little bit more hope that we're going to make it there and win this election. But I'll end it on this. I've thought now, probably about for like the last 6 months, at like very specific times, I thought for sure 4th of July, there was going to be a false flag. I was like, what better time than to attack us and on 4th of July, Independence Day, and get us to go into some other war. And I also thought, what better day to run a replay on 9/11? I thought we were going to get hit there. And then again, I still think on October 7th, I think they might try again. Those are like my 3 key dates that I thought for sure something was going to happen, and it didn't. And then every time I get to this point where I'm like, yeah, I don't think something's going to happen, maybe I was just overreacting, I won't be paying attention, and boom, something crazy happens. And I'm like, it's impossible to keep up. So the only way to do it is just to prepare yourself. I advise everybody to keep some Bitcoin, whether you believe in crypto or not. I'm the biggest Bitcoin believer. I've kept on, I moved to drain my 401k, everything in 2020, and put it all into Bitcoin. So I'm the absolute biggest Bitcoin maximalist. But I got silver here, I got some gold. I'm not against these shiny rocks and these silver little things. But do I think that this is going to be the currency of the future? Absolutely not. It's just impossible to barter. Like, things happen too fast now. There's no way we go back to a gold or silver system. And then you think about, oh, well, we're going to make it, it's going to be a gold backed dollar. And you're like, well, dude, wasn't the dollar a gold backed dollar from 1913 to 70? And then it wasn't, right? Like, who are we going to trust to hold the gold? Like, oh, we're going to use blockchain technology. Like, you can't use blockchain technology to do that. You could try, but it's still not tamper proof. And there's still no guarantee that anybody actually has the actual gold that they're saying that they have. So I would suggest that at the very least, right? Like in Nazi Germany, when that all went down and they started rounding up the Jews, right? There were Jews that were escaping, and the wife was having to take all of their gold jewelry and silver, and she was melting it down, and she was making homemade hangers out of it. And then she was, because they were going through the checkpoints, and the soldiers at the checkpoints were robbing these people blind, taking anything of any wealth or value. But they had all their clothes, and these soldiers don't care about clothes, let alone hangers. So they didn't pay attention, but all the clothes were hung up on silver and gold hangers. And that was the only way that they were able to extort their wealth or take their wealth with them if they had to flee a country. So if things get bad here, and I'm not saying that like it's going to be your specific country, it might be your state, right? It might be your city. You don't know, but there might come a time where you have to just up and go. And at the very least, you can keep a small amount of Bitcoin and all you have to do is memorize 12 words, and you keep those 12 words in your head. And then anywhere you go, all you need is an electronic device, and you can go to any Bitcoin ATM. They're all around the world, and you can have cash in your hand instantly. Or you can pay with Bitcoin because you have Bitcoin. So at the very least, understanding enough about how Bitcoin works to have 500, 1,000, or whatever, depending on how wealthy you are, you should have probably at least 5% of your wealth in there is my minimum. I keep like 95 of mine. And then I've sold everything that I don't need right now. I bought a $35,000 home that was foreclosed on. It was an absolute dump. I renovated it, so my payments are absolutely almost nothing. My car is on its absolute last leg. I'm just praying that it actually makes it, another couple of weeks. I have sold everything. I've got all of my resources. I got, over a year's worth of food for my entire family. I bought weapons, and I have gold, and I have some Bitcoin, and I'm ready. And I pray to God that I'm wrong. But if I'm not, I want to make sure that I give my family the highest probability of surviving no matter what situation plays out here. And even having the ability to buy your freedom, because that's most likely what it's going to come down to. You're going to want to get out of this country. You're going to want to get out of your state. You're going to want to get out of somewhere. And like, if you think it's corrupt now, just imagine if we went into some martial law scenario. I mean, you remember like the people at the Walmart greeters were ready to like choke you out if you didn't have your mask on. Like they were literally body slamming people onto the ground and dragging them out of Walmart because they didn't have a mask. So imagine, these psychopaths that get a little bit of authority, and imagine if they had weapons. Jeez, oh Pete, you better be ready to defend yourself. What do you think?
No, yeah, I totally agree with that take. Pretty much all of it. I think I pretty much agree with all of that.
I have to throw a little dome coin in there too for our buddy Dave.
No, I agree. Definitely being prepared. I also, like I said, I like to be try to be as level-headed as possible. Try not to be a defeatist. Meaning, is it possible that happens? Yes. Should we be prepared? Yes. We should even raise awareness to the things that could cause it to happen, potentially deter them from happening. Or more people can help minimize the damage if it ever happens, or at the least, like you said, like have the ability to protect your family or a plan. I definitely agree with that. Overall, I think that there's a lot of people in America that have weapons. There's a lot of people in America that just haven't felt the need or been in a position that they needed to repeat 1776. I think a lot of people kind of assume that no one would do it. But I was born in Tennessee, man. A lot of people would do it. And I don't know about everywhere else, but I mean, there's militias everywhere. I think that a scenario like we're discussing, even just with the realization of the severity of the issue with the people over the border, would do it. Where I don't really lose hope. That's how this country was started, and like disclaimers, no specific calls to anything, but like that's how America was founded. That's like who America is. And so I always leave that open. I leave that open as a possibility. I really don't think that, sure, there may be some mercenaries here, but I think that we may be able to get organized particularly or somewhat quickly and take them out. Now, obviously, if you talk about removing communication, the grid going down, anything like that, we would probably be in trouble for sure. But I think that America's got a spirit of fighting. And then I would always also say I just trust the creator. In the grand scheme of things, right, and the creator's in control, and whatever's supposed to happen, I guess, will happen. But so I don't know about the Trump thing, man. The last thing I'll say about Trump, the Israel stuff is super sketchy, and the Israel stuff isn't new. It's forever. It's since the 80s, and people say like, well, they make a good argument. They say, well, look, Q, whatever, said save Israel for last. Like, let's just throw Q out. Say it's Operation Trust. It's a deception. Say it's real. Who cares? There is an argument in theory that Trump, he could never become president again. He could never even get to where he is right now. Could never get funding. Nothing like that. If he wasn't pro-Israel ostensibly right now, and he would never even be able to win the Republican Party over because there's so many Zionists that haven't realized the corruption of Israel. And so he has to play ball until he gets in there. So I guess what I'm saying is, in the theory that Trump gets in, we'll know pretty quickly if he's legit. Mm-hmm. Will he actually do mass deportations? Will he actually shut down the border? Will he actually start to expose Israel? Will he actually require AIPAC to register as a foreign lobby? Will he actually go the JFK route, which got JFK killed? Because there's no excuses then. That's his final term. And so we'll know. So I'm like kind of I'm kind of excited, I guess, is my point. My point is like sure, it can be intense. It's kind of heavy, and who knows exactly what's happening. It's a crazy time to be alive. At the same time, it's potentially an awesome time to be alive. I'm just kind of watching the movie. And I think like if I can keep as much of that mentality as possible, it makes it a little bit easier. Like Trump's clearly the better president in the movie, right? Like he's hilarious. So yeah. Anyway, that's kind of my take on all that, because it can get kind of heavy and intense.
Man, I think you have the best take I've ever heard on it. You're 100% right, man. And when I right before I started filming this documentary, I was going back with one of my buddies. We were talking about filming a Bitcoin documentary, and I had started getting back into I was doing like 2 streams a day on Bitcoin, one on LFA TV for politics. And the more I got into the Bitcoin world, the more you realize that these people already won the war. And my buddy Eric says it the best. He's like, dude, like think about this. You have $1 million and you put $1 million into Bitcoin, into an asset that appreciates at a bare minimum of 69% per year every year for the last 15 years. Your wealth is going to increase exponentially. So once you get $1 million, if it goes up by, let's just say 50% a year, that's $500,000 a year profit that you now have made. And you can literally live off of $500,000 a year. And if you don't spend all that, the next year you're going to get another 59%. It's compounding interest every single year. So where I'm going with that is you go into the Bitcoin community, and they're not all in America, which is the best thing about it. They're in other countries that aren't dealing with any of this. And they have, like El Salvador, they're thriving right now. And then you look at some places over in Brazil and over in Europe, and they have these giant communities and towns that only operate and live and they function off Bitcoin. So it's really like, he's like, the best way to describe it, he's like, I give you so much credit because it's like, you know that there's this beautiful like paradise over here, and you choose to put on like this suit, and you go to battle for the American people, and you go to battle to fight for these kids, and you walk through this toxic filth where it's just negativity and it's just constant chaos and destruction and violence and the next new shiny object, and it's moments of boredom followed by sheer terror, right? And he goes, and you do that, and then you come back over here to help people about Bitcoin. And he goes, but like once you leave that away, he's like, I used to watch Redacted all the time. I used to watch Alex Jones. My wife would watch it every night. And we just realized like we were getting sucked into this. And it was actually taking away from what we wanted to accomplish as a family and as people. And he goes, I just give you a lot of credit for you do that. And then I realized, he's like, we've already won the war. We're standing over here. Everything that I'm talking about today, it all roots back to the dollar and our government's ability to print money out of thin air and devalue the wealth of an entire nation. So for people that don't understand that, right, we've been convinced that a 2% inflation rate is a good thing. Well, if we're talking about a free market, which everything like America, we should have a free market here. That's what our Constitution was built upon. It's what our nation was founded upon, a free market. And in a free market, there is a 5% deflationary force on everything that you buy, right? So let's just go back into like to the 1900s when there was basically nothing electronic. A man that wanted to farm 100 acres of potatoes, let's just say he needed 100 men, 1 man to work per acre, and your potatoes were a penny because that's roughly what he needed to charge you to be profitable and to pay his men and to grow his farm and to harvest all of these potatoes. Fast forward 10 years, the guy realizes, well, if I take a couple oxes and I buy an ox, and I take this tree and I cut it up and I make this plow thing and I let the ox drag behind there, he can till this whole field. Then I only need 5 workers and a couple oxes. I pay the oxes off in a year, and then technically I'm sitting in much more profit. And then another guy comes along and he doesn't have one farm yet, but he sees what this guy's doing. He goes, wow, if I put this, I could build this custom piece and put it on the back of 2 oxes and I could do the whole field, which is 2 oxes. So now I only need a couple employees, right? And that's where the free market takes in, because once there's that much profit to be made and an entrepreneur figures out how to exploit that profit margin, he's going to come in and he's going to create a business doing the same thing, and he's going to drive the price down of everything. So technology naturally puts a deflationary force on a market of 5%, which means that everything that we live in, this world we live in, everything around us should be getting 5% cheaper every year. Not only is it not getting 5% cheaper, they've convinced us that it's okay that we allow them to inflation at 2% a year. So that means that they're technically just off the tip of the iceberg. That's not even counting how they manipulate the numbers and all the data. They're devaluing your wealth by 7. They're stealing 7% of your wealth every year. They're sucking 7% of your family's wealth, and that's compounding, right? So, and basically in like, what is it, like 10 years, you basically lose everything. Or let me do it this way. So in 50 years ago, it'd be 74. In 74, the average vehicle, just like your basic starter, like today we say like a Ford Focus, back then it was probably like a Firebird or a Camaro or whatever, the basic manual windows, nothing. The basic car was $1,700. Today, that same vehicle is $43,000. A house, a 3-bedroom ranch house, standard house, garage, basically just a single family starter home. That house was $21,700. Today, that same house is $420,000. So what does that mean? That means that if you were to, today, if you were to say you're like, oh, I'm going to start saving because I want to buy my great grandkid his first car. How much money would I need to acquire in wealth to buy my grandkid his first brand new car right off the lot, manual everything, right? That house, that car, that car 50 years from today, so that'd be, what would that be? 2074, that same house, or same car, starter car, $890,000. And that's just at the rate that we've appreciated over the last 50 years. That doesn't even factor in the last 10 that we've done a majority of that damage. So that means your first house, your first starter house, your great grandkids, your first house is going to be $6.8 million, bro. How are you ever going to get enough raises over the next 50 years to be able to afford your starter car, your first car, for $890? And maybe you buy it used and you get it 50% off, or maybe it's a complete beater and it's 85 or it's 75% off. You're still paying $200,000 for a piece of crap Ford Focus that probably has a couple 100,000 miles on it. You'd be lucky if it gets you to and from work every day. That is the rate that they are devaluing the wealth of our nation. So every crime, it all points back to their ability to manipulate the dollar. Prior to 1913, the starting of the Federal Reserve, if our government wanted to go to war, how did they do that? Oh, they had to run massive PR campaigns and they had to sell war bonds. They wanted to import 500,000 cattle to make the United States the beef cattle industry of the world. How they do it? They sell cattle bonds, right? That's how our government had to get money from the people, because they had no other way to get it. They could tax us 1 or 2%, but the Constitution and our Supreme Court kept going, no, we were founded on a nation of no taxes. We don't have kings. We don't have servants. We don't have any of that. Taxes are against the Constitution. It was founded over a 3% tax. We fought a revolution so we would never have to pay tax. And today, your government is taxing you, the American citizen, 53% of every penny you make. If you don't own a business and you work a 9-to-5 job, between inflation, sales tax, property tax, income tax, and people don't even think about, you pay your cable bill and there's a surcharge on there. You think that, what do you think a surcharge is? That is a gosh damn tax. That is a tax that is going to one of these 3-letter unelected government bureaucrat hacks, where it's the FDA, the EPA, the environmental this, the property this. So every day, right, every dollar you make, you are giving 53% of it, whether you like it or not, whether you're willing to admit it or not. Our government is sucking 53% of every penny you make. And our founding fathers fought a revolution over a 3% tax on tea.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. And it gets really crazy when you start to see what that tax money is going to. Like some of the stuff that you're talking about and discussing in that documentary.
Israel.
To be as careful as possible, I guess, like, you start getting into the area of like moral obligations, almost obligatory to not participate.
I think
we'll leave it there maybe, but
I'm with you on that. I think that it is our, Thomas Jefferson, was it Thomas Jefferson? It was Thomas Jefferson who said that if the government ever becomes so tyrannical that the citizens can no longer achieve life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, then it is your duty, it is your obligation to remove said government and reinstall a new form of government that serves we the people. And then take that a step further. I think it was it Henry Ford who said that if the American people ever understood the banking industry, there'd be a revolution before tomorrow morning. And then Thomas Jefferson also said, if the American people ever let a company or a corporation control the wealth of their nation, their children will wake up homeless on the streets that their founding fathers fought to conquer. And we've done all the above, my friend.
Man, absolutely, dude. And like, yeah, it's actually far beyond that point. At the least, we should not be complicit. I think that's what's wild about the whole thing is like, actually, we have to fund it. So we're funding it. Like literally, we are funding it, and it's kind of required. Yeah, that's pretty crazy, man.
When is the last time you listened to the George Washington farewell address to the nation? Because I assume most people in here have not. Go listen to it. When everybody that's watching this, I would leave this stream right now and start listening to it. It's that important. When you listen to what he warned us about, right? other nations and getting involved with other nations and other nations' businesses and their wars and allowing them to infiltrate our politics and us. It blows your. It's almost like he wrote it for today. It is so bizarre, and the connections between Izzy and all these other countries that we're just they control us. I mean, I don't even know what you say in your stream, but AI Pack. I mean, they openly brag about buying, what is it, like 98 or 95% of our politicians?
98.
I know we're probably going over the limit, man. I talk a lot, so.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. No, I agree, and I would actually say we definitely can't talk about this in any detail, but
yeah,
a couple references to the World War II era, and lots of deceptions there, and ironically, that was a major component of what was going on there. It was a major disagreement about banking, centralized banking, nationalizing a currency, not going on with certain banking. It's a recurring theme. That banking, corruption, and lack of freedom, it's all joined at the hip. It all infiltrates its way in, and it's pretty crazy because people are starting to realize it again. And so that's the question: like, how do we handle it? Do we handle it the right way? Do we not handle it the right way? So I think that's where we are. Well, bro, I really appreciate. I don't want to keep it too long, but I really appreciate you coming on. I definitely want people to watch your documentary, and one reason I really thought it would be important for you to come on is because my audience specifically, because we're talking about people that are like OGs in terms of like quote unquote conspiracies, right? Which have turned out to just be a bunch of truths. Basically just means that you research things. And they're just like, when you really get to that point, you're like, bro, I don't trust any of this. I don't trust this person. And like, oh, he's going to save me. Well, look who's funding him, and look who's behind him, look who's behind him, and look who's in his cabinet, look who's in his administration, look what he flip-flopped on, look at the speech law he passed, and blah, blah, blah. And people are just very disillusioned. It's like a uniparty, and there's the rare outlier, if anything, and they don't trust them either, right? And I guess what I'm saying is I really resonated with what you were saying in terms of and what you were presenting with the documentary, because people get very heartless and we're being deceived. And it's like these children coming across the border, like they shouldn't have been there. Their parents shouldn't have been doing that. It's like, dude, it's a child. Like even if it was just completely illegal, they weren't incentivized, whatever the scenario, it's a child, bro. It's a child. And they've gotten us to argue from these paradigms so heartlessly and apathetically. Like what's happening overseas is a perfect example. People arguing for Israel, against Israel, the way that they talk about the other side, it's so heartless, so apathetic, so nihilistic. Same thing with this. We're talking about, children being trafficked, and we're talking about families being deceived and incentivized and come in and set up to fail, and children being stolen and trafficked. And that's a major problem. Like every man should feel like a moral obligation to not only speak out about that, but to try to do everything in their power to stop it. And that is a real thing. I know many people live in Texas. It's a very real thing. Like you're saying, you went down there and saw it. I've never actually been to the border to see it. I know people that live like basically on the border, very close to the border. It's absolutely a real thing. It's not just Trump sensationalizing it. The people I know say Trump doesn't actually, he understates it, and that it's actually way more extreme and it's way more of a militant threat than we're being told. So I guess that's why I wanted you to come on. My crowd is like very just like they've detached. And it's easy to hear Trump say something and be like, okay, well, he always exaggerates, or, oh, this is all just a lie, or it's just like to get us worked up or scared. And I think that it's a real thing. It's a very real thing we need to talk about. Our government traffics drugs, traffics guns, and traffics people. And they have honeypot situations from Epstein to quote unquote the Diddy situation. Those are probably nothing, but they take our politicians, they have them doing stuff with children, and then they have dirt on them. They are all in on a very dark, twisted game of human sex trafficking of children and minors. That's just what it is, and it needs to be exposed, right? It's the utmost evil, and our money is going to fund it, and they're pulling them over. I mean, they haven't made in terms of like just like it's basically free. And they're having us pay for their like pure evil atrocities. It's crazy. So that's how I feel about it, man. I really do appreciate all the work that you put in for it. I want you to make sure make sure you tell everyone exactly where to get it and how they can get it and stuff like that.
Yeah, man. I want to do something special for your audience. I haven't done this for anybody else, man. I really appreciate you bringing me on the show and having the the stones and the fortitude to talk about this, because we've been PayPal froze our account and they froze all of our funds. They won't be releasing any funds from anybody that paid with PayPal. That happened a couple of weeks ago. Facebook took us down as well. So if you post links to our site on Facebook, they'll take it down. This documentary is so powerful and so impactful. I just got a text message, actually a tweet from Clayton Morris. If you look at my Twitter, will tell everybody that they need to watch this. This is the greatest documentary that he's ever seen. And a lot of people have been telling us that. So it has the potential to really make an impact and help rescue these children. So you can go to thisistreason.com. That's www.thisistreason.com. And if you guys use promo code Witsit30, the first 10 people that use Witsit30 are going to get 30% off this documentary. So we have two options. If you go at the top of the website, if you close out that X there, Witsit, oh, right there it is. So at the very top, you can see the tabs. If you go to the VIP access tab, that one is where all of the interviews and all of everything are from all of our sources. So for $9.99, you're going to get 2 documentaries. For $14.99, you get 2 documentaries, and then you get unlimited access to all of the additional sources, these interviews. And then at the bottom of each interview there, you can see this person's social media handles. Brandon's, he doesn't care to put anything. He's just kind of private, but the rest of them will have 3 links. You can follow them on Twitter. A lot of them will have a Give, Send, Go. If they got 3 of them, they'll have their Rumble, their Twitter, and their Give, Send, Go. So you guys can swing over their support. If you like any of them, skip a cup of coffee, donate a couple dollars, and help keep these people. These are the people that are out here fighting for our freedom, and God bless each and every one of them. And then after, so if you don't make it in the first 10, you guys aren't there, and there's no 30% discounts left, use Witsit 15, and that'll still get you 15% off everything as well.
Yeah, there's so much here, dude.
Oh, and then can I say one more thing? So at the very top there's a call to action tab. So we have a call to action, which you can click on it, but I won't read it or talk too much about it because it's probably not YouTube appropriate, but we are calling for some call to actions there and getting some support. We'd like to deliver 10 million signatures to whatever administration takes office next, that we want the harshest punishment for people that R-word children or molest children. And then if you do watch it, there's a review tab at the top. If you guys could go out of your way, everybody asks, what do we do? What could we do? How can we get involved? And I say, gosh, just helping us share this content, writing a review, and then going out of your way, if you really want to help us, is just share a video review. Say, hey, I just watched this video. It's very interesting. Tell us what you liked about it, and post it on whatever social media platform you can, and try to get more people to watch it and help us out. So thank you, Witsit. I greatly appreciate you, man.
Yeah, of course, man. I am not just saying this. I absolutely think that this documentary needs to go crazy viral, because this is the only realistic way that something like this would be taken care of. Because, like you said, they're like, oh, the congressman kind of had to say something, kind of had to do something because it got out. That's the only way. This should go super viral after a certain amount of time. Certain clips should go super viral next. We should just make this go crazy viral, and where people can't just turn their head out of sight, out of mind anymore. And I think it's a great unifier. I'm all for it. So yeah, man. And then you said this stuff, either they caught it or they didn't catch it. First however many people catch it.
Yep.
But cool, man. You have anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
No, man, just thank you for everything you're doing, and hope to collaborate with you on a documentary on the I'm dying to make a Flat Earth documentary. After we save these children, that's my #1 priority. So hopefully we can collab on something. I'd love to go film something with you, man. I think it would be a blast to do, and I think we could really help open up a lot of people's eyes. And if this thing goes mega viral, right, and I'm going to have a mailing list of, I would say probably 99% of the people who watch this documentary aren't going to be flat earthers. So I think it's going to be a big opportunity to take all of the contact information that I have from these people, and then the relationship and the trust that I've built with them to kind of, help move them towards the flat earth side of things too. So I think we can do some cool stuff together, man.
No, yeah, that sounds awesome, bro. That's very cool. Awesome, brother. Thank you for jumping on. We'll have to stay in touch, man, for sure. And go check out the documentary for sure. So thank you, brother. We'll talk soon.
God bless.
Much love. All right, guys. I'm gonna just probably pretty quickly wrap this up, but shout out to my boy. You go follow him on X. I'll put all of his links in the description. I think we stayed YouTube branded the whole time, but if we didn't, then it'll get taken down. It is what it is. The backup is, I think we're good, but I'm not going to pull it down or anything. We're on Rumble, we're on Rockfin, we're on X. I'll put all of his links in the description. Also, I'll put the link to the website in the description. I'll try to run really quickly. I don't think we really have. We had a pretty generous $50 tip. Thank you so much. AP on YouTube. It said toothache, a bacterial infection. Can that not be corrected with alcohol and or antibiotics, or even simply sound? matter you are well received. The truth is not in anything you have been told. Not sure exactly what you're saying, but no, I've had a crazy toothache, and dude, I don't think you just wish some. I know you can't just wish some alcohol around. It depends on the severity of the toothache, exactly what the cause of it is. It gets to a point where it's literally like crippling. Okay, I think we're good. I think we're just gonna wrap this up because I want it to just stay what it's about. So, I meant everything I said. I think this is crazy. I don't think people realize what's actually going on, which is that our border is not only being flooded, it's literally being used to facilitate children and forms of human trafficking all around the country, and it's being facilitated. And the people that are actually trafficking them are being given plenty of money, ample amount of resources to do so. And anyone that starts to catch up on it, they weed them out, or they start hiding it, or they just want to keep an eye on who finds out so they can make sure no one knows. So it's actually our responsibility to bring attention to it. Anyone that cannot get together and agree on that and how important it is to stand up for these children, to defend the children, and realize that there's this crazy, evil, occultic conglomerate of a power structure that is seemingly always found to be around these same circles of, SA and rituals and trafficking. And it's pretty crazy, pretty dark stuff. And yeah, I think it's just time that we call it out. So mad respect to him for doing this. Go support the documentary. Thisistrueason.com. All right. I love you guys. I'm going to wrap it up. Seek and speak truth unequivocally, and the weak find contentment in the consensus of ignorance. So it doesn't matter what other people think. Speak the truth regardless of what they think, because they always attack you. Because what's true is rarely popular, and what's popular is rarely true. So I'll catch up with you guys later. Peace.
That's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Rappers acting steady high, steady simple pills. Glorify suicide so they get the deals. Big pharma set it up, had to flip the pills. Control the music industry until the scripts get filled. Geopolitically, yeah, we in the field. That's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Took the way you saw the world, then distorted it. Now you think you wanna rock that twirl, somewhere orbiting. Theories disproportionate, the truth distorted quick with a forceful grip. They force a misinfo that we absorbing quick. Took the people's signature to mean extorted it. They forging it. If news anchors informant to informing them, there's a surplus, but they tell us there are shortages. Credit economy, mortgages, dollar that's supported with empty fortresses. But what's important is this: we courting ships, important gifts. Of course it is what extortion is, in accordance with an assortment list of foreign tricks. We ignoring which informant this, informant this. It looked like we were snoring tricked. Pedophilia and the government endorsing it. Yeah, eugenics is exactly what abortion is. You just vilify those insubordinate. Way to matrix engineer, that's unfortunate. Geopolitically, we in a field. That's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Rappers acting say they high, say they simple pills. Glorify suicide so they get the deals. Big pharma set it up just to flip the pills. Control the music industry until the scripts get filled. Geopolitically, yeah, we in a field. That's for Israel. Wonder, is it real?